My nephew kicked my son's service dog so hard it couldn't walk, and I watched my father do something I'd never seen him do in my entire life. My son has had epilepsy since he was 5, and his service dog Bruno has saved his life more times than I can count by alerting us before seizures hit. We were headed to my parents' house for Thanksgiving week, and I was terrified because my 13-year-old nephew has never been safe around animals, and my sister has never held him accountable for anything. 6 months ago, Bruno started pawing at my son's chest in the middle of the night and wouldn't stop until I woke up and found my son turning blue in his bed. The doctor at the hospital looked me in the eyes and said, if that dog hadn't woken you up when he did, your son would have had permanent brain damage or worse. When my nephew was 9, he had a hamster that he squeezed to death, and my sister stood at the funeral saying, it was an accident, he just loved it too much, he didn't know his own strength. I watched his face while she spoke, and there was nothing there. No tears, and no guilt, and nothing at all. My father is 63 years old, and I have never once heard him raise his voice. Not when my sister crashed his car in high school. Not when he caught my brother stealing from his wallet. Every conflict ends with him saying, let's all just calm down, we're family, we'll figure this out. So when I called him before the trip and said, Dad, I don't think Bruno is safe around my nephew, he said, it'll be fine, I'll keep an eye on things, just make it through Thanksgiving. We pulled into the driveway on Sunday afternoon, and within the first hour, my nephew had already cornered Bruno in the kitchen and yanked his tail hard enough to make him yelp. My sister didn't even look up from her phone. He's just playing. It's a dog, not a baby. I found my father, and he put his hand on my shoulder and said, I'll talk to him. Monday night at dinner, my nephew kept kicking Bruno under the table, and every time his foot connected, Bruno would flinch and look at me with these desperate eyes like he was begging me to make it stop. My sister said, Bruno tried to bite him first. He's just defending himself. And my nephew smirked at me from across the table because we both knew that was a lie. Tuesday afternoon, my son came running to me with tears streaming down his face because he couldn't find Bruno anywhere. We searched for almost an hour before I found him locked in the basement, shaking in the dark, and my nephew was in the living room playing video games like nothing happened. My sister said, the dog was begging at the table. Honestly, he did everyone a favor. That night, I told my father we were leaving in the morning, and he grabbed both my hands and said, please, just make it through Thanksgiving dinner. Just one more day. I promise I will fix this. I should have left. Wednesday was Thanksgiving morning, and I was in the kitchen helping my mom prep the turkey when I heard Bruno yelp from the living room. Then I heard it again. Then I heard a sound come out of that dog that I had never heard before. I ran in and found my nephew standing over Bruno with his hands in his pockets. Bruno was on his side crying and trying to get up, but his back leg was bent in a way that made my stomach lurch. I dropped to my knees and my nephew shrugged. He wouldn't stop following me around. My sister walked in and rolled her eyes. He's fine. Dogs are resilient. Stop being dramatic. I said, your son just broke my son's service dog's leg, and she crossed her arms. Maybe if you didn't make your kid so dependent on an animal, it wouldn't be a crisis every time something happens. I heard footsteps on the stairs, and my son appeared in the doorway and saw Bruno on the floor, and his face just collapsed. He ran over and dropped down and started petting Bruno's face, saying, it's okay, buddy, it's okay. And then I saw his left hand start to twitch. Bruno saw it too, and even with his leg shattered, he started dragging himself toward my son because that was his job. My son's eyes rolled back, and he collapsed on the floor in a full seizure, and Bruno kept pulling himself forward with his front legs, whimpering with every inch. My father walked in from the hallway and stopped dead. My son was seizing on the floor. Bruno was still dragging himself toward him with a broken leg. My nephew was just standing there watching like it was television. My father opened his mouth, and what came out was, get out of my house, in a voice I didn't recognize. So loud his voice cracked, and my sister stumbled backward into the wall. Daddy, please, get out! His face went purple, and the tendons in his neck stood out like ropes, and my nephew bolted for the door like the house was on fire. My father dropped to the floor next to my son and held his hand and stayed there until the seizure stopped, and the whole time he was crying so hard he couldn't breathe. Bruno needed surgery for a fractured leg, and my father paid the $4,500 bill before I could even offer. My sister hasn't been to a family event in 2 years, and last month her son got expelled from school for kicking a classmate's therapy dog.